Before we start today's show, let me tell you the podcast is brought to you by the Oxford Exxon Highway 6 West in Oxford. Go get your lunch special today. It's $4.99, 2 sides bread, 32-ounce drink. It's chicken and dressing today. If you so desire that, you can get ribs tonight. If you don't want to cook, let them take advantage of all the different options at the Oxford Exxon, including the Speed Pass Plus app, the mobile rewards program, and much more there on Highway 6 West. And we're coming to you from the Clark Ford Studio, 662-257-1900, Highway 25 South there in Amory. You give Corey Clark a call. 15 minutes later, you're going to have a quote. You can shop it around. You can take it. It's going to be your best deal. And then at the end of it, when you pick the car out, you're ready to sign the paperwork, tell Corey you heard about his dealership on the podcast. $500 off right there with Clark Ford there in Amory. Now let's get to the show.
From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
That broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Welcome in to this Thursday edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. Chase Parham, and at the moment, Neal McCready. We'll see how long Neal is going to hang out with us today. He is not in town, as you know. He was not in Oxford for the world setting on fire yesterday for the early signing period, so we bring him in now. Also today, we are going to talk to Russell Johnson. Little note about that. I taped about 20 minutes with Russell yesterday afternoon. It was right after Matt Luke's press conference. It was about 4:30. So if we talk about some times or different things, just realize that's when that interview happened, was sometime late yesterday afternoon. Also going to speak with Jeffrey Wright today, as we do every Thursday. So a little bit of a piecemeal podcast, but you'll get the full length. It'll just kind of be a couple people, and we'll see how we get through it. But nonetheless, Neal, you picked a pretty good couple days there to go out of town. Potentially, we're going to reset into an offensive coordinator search as we move forward. But yesterday, all about recruiting, and for Ole Miss, frankly, a pretty dud of a day.
Yeah, I spent 2 hours on a plane, and I wrote a really good column that will never see the light of day.
I haven't deleted it yet. I can publish it if you would like me to.
I don't think that would be a great idea. I don't think
it would be a great thing.
President would say.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't think he would say it would be prudent at this juncture.
Well, I always talk about that great coffee table book where we just find old columns that never actually happened and publish them. That would be a really good one for the Ole Miss version of that coffee book yesterday.
It was a really funny thing, and it transitions into this. I kept asking Russell over the course of several days, hey, do I need to write something on the Kobe Dean? And he would say, I think so, maybe. And it just was one of those deals. And Russell worked that story super hard. I don't know. People are hung up on a fire emoji and stuff like that. He worked that story so hard for the longest time and really did not waffle until kind of the end a little bit. And he waffled because the intelligence that he was getting from sources indicated that he thought there was a strong chance that Kobe Dean would sign with Ole Miss. And so I wrote the column and had it ready, but I never, as you know, because you and I texted about it a little bit, I never felt good about it. I never got that. I never got from some of the other people involved in it. I just never got those kind of confident feeling he was headed to Ole Miss. I've said this on the board, so I can say it out loud. I was talking to people at Alabama who were pretty resolute in their belief that he was headed to Georgia. And so anyway, I wrote the column, and the column will never see the light of day. And I've had some people say, why didn't you write a column after the way it went down? I don't know. I don't know how you write a column that truly, when you weren't there, that truly represents what the mood was, because I wasn't at the press conference. I've talked to you and others who were there. And I've watched some of the video, and I think I get a feel for it. It didn't go well. There's no spinning it. It didn't go well. They, once again, for whatever reason, they can't close. And once again, for whatever reason, they cannot recruit elite, impactful players on the defensive side of the field other than Sam Williams, who was a junior college prospect. And so I'm always skeptical of JUCOs, and I'll be skeptical of him until he proves me wrong. And hopefully for Ole Miss, he does. But the inability to land those elite defensive players is a major problem. And here's the truth: when you build up that hashtag Mississippi made, which I said all along I thought was a bad idea because it paints you into a strategic corner. When you do that and then you fail in Mississippi, and they did, it magnifies the failure.
I asked Russell this, and people will hear it in a little while. Again, I taped Russell way before you and I are talking. I'm going to ask you this too, though. You look at it, Ole Miss and State mentioned among proverbial losers from a national signing day perspective yesterday in a Rivals.com story written by Woody Womack this morning. And it's because neither one of them were able to hold on to in-state talent. 6 of the top 12 Mississippians signed with out-of-state programs, including number 1 signee, obviously, Nakobe Dean to Georgia, Brandon Turnage sticking with Alabama in Ole Miss's backyard, and several other guys. You know, Hugh Freeze, Dan Mullen did a pretty good job of keeping everyone home. Is it just the changes? Is it that there were so many more elite talents, everybody's cherry-picking? What was it that allowed out-of-state programs to get this much traction in Mississippi and, frankly, not really have much fear in doing so?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I think it's a number of things, and these are just sort of working theories on my part. I'm not ready to die on any of these hills. One is I think the rivalry has, over the past several years, gotten so caustic that it's negative. And I really believe that. And I watched it with I've kind of watched it with interest over the last couple of years, just because, you know, like I've talked about Campbell being recruited by Mississippi State and Ole Miss and just the stuff that they get. And so you pay a little bit of attention to it. And some of the stuff that Mississippi State does involving Ole Miss is obnoxious. And frankly, a lot of the things that Ole Miss did involving Mississippi State was obnoxious. And then the look on the field the last couple of years has not been a positive look. Those kids don't watch Alabama, Auburn, for example, and see what they see when they watch Ole Miss State. Brawls where it just looks like it's completely out of control. A lot of disrespect. There's just such animus. I don't know. I think it's one of those weird things where they hear so much negative about the two schools from the other school that they sort of lump them together a little bit. And then for Mississippi State, I question whether Moorhead is a cultural fit there. I've had other people tell me that. I question his ability to recruit at the level in Starkville that Dan Mullen did. Dan Mullen recruited at a really high level when you think about it. I don't know that Moorhead's going to be able to do that. The initial results sort of support my theory there. And then the Ole Miss program, there's just been, NCAA sanctions are designed to hurt. They did hurt. They have taken the confidence out of the program. They have taken the excitement out of the program. There were a lot of games at Vaught Hemingway. You were there. I was there. There weren't a lot of people there. There wasn't a lot of energy there. They need to be able to break through. And that's kind of what I'd written on Nakobe Dean had they gotten him. It was getting that second 5-star player is so much easier than getting the first. Finding the pioneer is a lot harder than finding settlers to come to already settled land, if you will. Ole Miss is back in that point where it's got to find kind of pioneer sort of kids to build their program around. The column that I've written referenced, my belief that, for example, that Ole Miss should retire Romero Miller's jersey. And I talked to Romero, you were there at the podcast, about that. And he's like, well, I think really the jersey they ought to retire is Rufus French, because Rufus French came a year earlier when Ole Miss was coming off massive sanctions with Tommy Tuberville had just gotten there. It made it easier for Romero, and then subsequently Deuce and Terrence Metcalf, and then Ken Lucas, and then on and on. for elite kids to come there and rebuild the program. It's easier when you're not the first. And I was talking about Nakobe Dean sort of being the first and him making it easier for the next class. And that was what the column was kind of built around. And they didn't do it. And you're right. I mean, in the last, years ago, when Freeze and Mullen had Ole Miss and State going at a high level, respectively, Alabama and LSU and Georgia and those programs, they'd come in and test the waters a little bit, but they'd sort of spend their time and energy elsewhere. And now they're not intimidated at all. They're clearly, the kind of reception they're getting from the kids is making it where they know that they're not wasting their time. And it's not a great look when a kid from Oxford goes to Alabama and a kid from Horn Lake goes to Georgia and another kid from Horn Lake goes to LSU and the kids go to Auburn and kids are going everywhere except Ole Miss and State for the most part. I mean, yet right now for Ole Miss, the fact that Mississippi State didn't do well in recruiting is not much solace because you didn't take advantage of the fact that they didn't do well in recruiting. Yeah. And the rest of the league sort of looks at Ole Miss and State right now, and I can tell you what they're all thinking. Like if you're Arkansas or Texas A&M, you're looking at this going, hey, we might get this thing back to the old days where those were 2 automatic W's. And that's what they're thinking right now.
So two things to that. First one is it is amazing of the NCAA penalty as far as resetting the program, because that's what we're talking about here. I don't think we've talked about this a ton, where and from a PR standpoint, from a notoriety around the country, it completely caused Ole Miss to have to reset, because you're talking about, hey, the first one. It was only 2016. It was only 3 years ago that Ole Miss signed 2 of the top 5 players in the country in Shea Patterson and Greg Little. And that quickly, because of the NCAA thing and the way the program has fallen from a known level around the country, it's like it never happened. It's a complete reset where you're, like the basketball program right now is looking for that first NBA player or that presence or whatever. It's amazing because it's a complete difference from what we were expecting, just a few years ago where, hey, Ole Miss is on the map and they're doing this and doing this. Now they're looking for the Shea Patterson, the Robert Condici, the Quan Treadwell all over again.
Yeah, it's revisionist history now. Not revisionist history. It's hindsight. It's 2020. They lost the messaging war on that NCAA stuff, right? They did. They absolutely lost it. The NCAA won and they lost. They did not fight back vocally. They did not fight back in the media. And the message that got out to kids. I'm in Washington D.C. right now. One of the Uber drivers, when he said, "Where are you guys from?" We said, "Oxford, Mississippi," and he knew that was Ole Miss. And he goes, "They're down there buying Ferraris for football players, aren't they?" And I told him, I was like, "No," but I thought to myself, that's messaging. That's the message the NCAA sent. The message the NCAA sent very clearly was Ole Miss is cheating like mad. When in reality, as we saw yesterday, Ole Miss doesn't have the resources to cheat in a traditional manner and win. They can't keep up. They don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower and they don't have the capital. And when I say capital, I mean literal capital to get it done. But the messaging on that NCAA thing was that they cheated and their success was based on nothing but cheating. And you're right. The program from a PR standpoint and everything is back at flatline. It's a total rebuild. It's a complete, as you said, reset. It is when your computer, like you and I both use Macs. When the Mac thing just starts spinning, after a little while you look at it and you have no choice but to turn off the computer and restart it. And that's where they are. They're at restart. And that's a very frustrating thing for fans. And I get it. It should be frustrating. It should make you very angry. And people are angry. I thought a lot of the emotions that I saw yesterday on message boards and that I heard, and I thought it was all justified. There ought to be frustration. There ought to be frustrations right now. There ought to be people asking for answers and demanding answers. And quite frankly, they're due those answers. They're due more transparency. They're due more honesty than they're getting from the people that they're paying to run their programs.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Let's bring Jeffrey into into the show now, it should just click straight in. So, this podcast is brought to you by one of our new sponsors, the Blow Dry Bar in Oxford, Mississippi. Guys, if you're searching for an outside-the-box Christmas, anniversary, or birthday present to any female in your life, this place has your answers. They were voted Best New Business in Oxford in 2018, and they will not disappoint. They have many packages they can put together for women in your life. So give them a call, 662-638-3310. There's a Rebel Grover podcast discount if you tell them about us. And the reason that you are there is, so again, 662-638-3310. Also experience all things Oxford in a week during the 3rd annual Pop-Up Oxford. It's going to be January 19th through 27th. Experience a week-long celebration of Oxford's rich cultural scene of food, art, lectures, and musical performances, almost basketball and more during that time period. Again, January 19th through 27th. Also, don't miss the 9th annual Fiber Arts Festival during Pop-Up Oxford. That's going to be January 24th through 27th. The festival features receptions, lecture, demonstrations, children's activities, and classes. Special events during the Pop-Up Oxford include songwriters competitions, Hotel Hop, Art Crawl, Thacker Mountain Radio Hour, MLK Day, featured events, and more. So be sure to go ahead and check out the website at popupoxfordms.com. Also, the podcast is brought to you in part by Community Mortgage, located in Oxford, Memphis, Soto County, and Chattanooga, one of the older mortgage companies in the Southeast. Our underwriting and processing is done in Memphis, so you're getting local underwriting that understands your market, a leader in condo financing and the float-down option. You can find Jason Lowe at 662-234-2704 or JLowe, that's JLOWE, at communitymtg.com. Also, don't waste your time with the big chains, the big pharmacy chains. Go somewhere where you're appreciated. That's G&M Pharmacy. They're a locally owned and operated, and they care about their customers. They've been Oxford's trusted hometown pharmacy for 40 years and offer many great services such as MedSync, immunizations, free delivery to your home or workplace, and much more. They're conveniently located right off South Lamar Boulevard here in Oxford. They can transfer your medications easily, so just give them a call at 662-236-2222, and they will take care of the rest. And last but not least, Christmas is almost here, so if you're looking for the perfect gift for the kids, give MasterCuts a call. MasterCuts can make a custom playground that will entertain your kids for years to come, from simple forts to princess castles or pirate ships. Let MasterCuts build a base for your child's imagination to run wild. Reach out and schedule a free meeting to see what MasterCuts can build for you. You give them a call at 662-607-7773 or info@gomastercuts.com. Been a long time with us. They can take care of your yard throughout the year, and now they're also in the playground building business. They do a great job with that as well. So again, 662-607-7773. We'll stay on air. People can hear how it's going.
One of my favorite podcasts, the part.
All right, here you go. Do what, Neal?
I said one of my favorite podcasts, the part where they're kind of getting everybody. It's 4 people and they all Skype it, and as they're getting everybody in, that minute or two is actually some of the funniest parts of that podcast. So this will be fine.
You off today, Jeff?
No, I am doing 5 straight hours of radio today.
Oh, good. So basically off. I mean, it's.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite of being off.
Okay. You seem a little troubled. You all right?
Oh, no. I'm just thinking about the fact that I now have to do 5 straight hours of radio.
But you're in Memphis, so you don't have to do 5 straight hours of National Signing Day radio if you're in some other markets. Like if you're in Birmingham today, you're talking nothing but freaking signing day for 5 hours.
No, and thank God that the University of Memphis played Arkansas Little Rock last night, so I can just do 5 hours on that.
Oh God! You think he's exaggerating? He's not.
Yeah, I was saying I'm not laughing.
They had a close call against Arkansas Little Rock, and it will be 5 hours.
What are you talking about? You got covered, man. What are you talking about?
5 hours of dissecting a December college basketball game.
What was the reaction to the Tennessee game the other day?
Immediately, I don't know if Penny is like a Trumpiavellian genius, but like the conversation immediately shifted to the post-game comments between Penny and Rick Barnes, and now that has like every single day there's a new thing in that rivalry. So right now the game, like the fact that they were never in the basketball game and the fact that Tennessee controlled the entire game, like that's essentially been forgotten. And now all everyone's talking about is the rivalry and wait till next year. And while Memphis has James Wiseman coming, I'm not dismissive of that fact. Like he's going to be a very, very, very rich man in about 18 months or so. Tennessee signed a 5-star too. And so if I'm the Memphis crowd, I'm not sure I'd be doing the whole wait till next year thing like as intensely as they have been.
You want me to tie this in, though? This is what Penny Hardaway has that Matt Luke doesn't have and will never have.
Charisma?
Hardaway is getting, well, some of that, but it's not really that. Hold on a second. What he has is that he has a honeymoon that will last 2 years. He has excitement that Luke was never going to get. And I'm not blaming Ole Miss for this because there was nothing about Luke's hire that was exciting. It's when you restart with something fresh, it is so much more fun to follow for fans than when you restart with something that feels like a retread. And that's where Luke is right now, and he can't get out of it. I don't know how he gets out of it, honestly. Hardaway can have a game like the one Jeffrey just discussed, where Memphis was never, ever in that game. Tennessee was always winning that game. Yet the way that it went down with the big crowd and stuff. Remember when Ole Miss played Texas? Was that in 12? And
2012.
Yeah, and it was a big crowd, and Bevo was there, and it was like excitement in the air. And Texas kicked Ole Miss's ass that night. But if you go back and look at the way people felt about that game, outside of the handful of people that expect their team to win every game, most people were like, man, that was fun. Wait till we get some better players. Just wait till we get some better players. That's the environment. That's going to be awesome. And they were right, because they did get better players, and that was the environment. And when they won, it was awesome. There's no question about that. That's what Hardaway has going. He was able to, immediately after that game, pivot from the fact that a really good basketball team had just kicked his team's tail to look at the environment. This is what Memphis basketball is supposed to be. This is what it's going to be. This is how we're going to be. Wait till we get the good players. They're coming. And when they come, man, this place is going to be rocking. And when the results are different, it's going to be awesome. And so there's really no dent in the excitement whatsoever among Memphis people, because Wiseman's coming and DJ Jeffries is coming. And in their minds, hey, that was just an appetizer, a little appetizer for the big, fantastic feast that is coming. And they're ready for it. They lost no enthusiasm, no emotion after losing to Tennessee. If anything, it fired them up even more.
Oh, it's definitely, especially here now that it's become, Memphis versus Tennessee and the rivalry's back. Like, if anything, like, you could make a case that Penny's making himself, amongst other coaches or nationally, you can make a case that Penny's not coming off well, but to his fan base, he has completely, like, everyone is so completely on board that, I mean, that's, I somewhat jokingly said, a Trumpian type rallying cry, but I mean, that's exactly what it is. But you mentioned this about Luke, and I was pondering this yesterday. What do you think cost him the honeymoon more? Being, like, just the existence, being a part of Hugh Freeze's staff and feeling like an extension, or the fact that when he got the head coaching job, when he got the head job, he made 0 staff changes? Because I do think if Matt Luke would have been kind of Machiavellian and, yes, that coaching staff helped him get that gig at 6-6, but if he gets the head coaching job and he makes 6, 7 firings and gets his own staff in there, I do think that would have felt like a fresh start. I think the thing that killed it from day one was doubling down on, well, these guys got me the job, so I'm gonna honor them, or I'm gonna respect that, and I'm gonna let them coach for a year, because I think that's what made it feel like such an extension.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's the biggest mistake that he's made so far, and it was a big one. There's no question. And I understand the rationale behind doing what he did, but in hindsight, it was an error, no question about it.
I think that mistake is going to cost whatever chance Matt Luke had. That's going to turn him into this. I think this is his last year.
Support overall, just the way it's going.
Just the way that it's going. My other deal is it felt like in November when Ole Miss could see the writing on the wall. Like there was some intense denial, I think. And when you're in denial, you tend to rationalize just about anything. And I felt like the whole idea of, well, if he can just get his recruiting class in, we're now doing the situation where it feels like every 3 weeks we're coming up with a new, if he can just. And, whether or not get his own staff in, get a full recruiting class. It's like, you just keep coming up with all these ifs, and all these ifs are completely ignoring the fact that this program has no buzz.
Let me interrupt real quick, and because it's tied in with what you're saying. Here we are on. No, but I'm supporting what you're saying. It's December the 19th, 20th, and 20th, December the 20th. They just got waxed in Memphis yet again, and Maurice Harris, as of this morning, is still on the staff. They just got their tail kicked in Mississippi. I mean, thoroughly. Derek Nix is still on the staff. No one's accountable. The only people that got fired, the only person that got fired was Wesley McGriff, who walked out giggling with all of his money. He walks out laughing. He got paid.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I don't care. I'm just going to keep this idea in my head. When y'all got that picture, or whoever got the picture of Wesley walking out of the IPF with that roller bag behind him.
You think there was cash in it, right?
I'm 100% just saying that. I don't care. Like, it can be a metaphor, it can be a reality. In my mind, it's going to choose to be a reality. He was strolling out with millions of dollars of cash in a suitcase.
So to break in, real quick, y'all were talking about, Russell asked Matt about Memphis yesterday during the press conference, and got the very politically correct answer you expect. The answer was, we'll try to address it in February with the remaining players that are still there. Obviously, we have a year-round recruiting plan that's based on relationships, and those guys here and continuing to battle and compete, and we'll continue to do that. That was the only answer from Matt yesterday regarding the lack of Memphis presence on the signing day list.
There you go. Problem solved.
It's too late. I mean, and look, I'm not criticizing that answer in that setting.
No, I get that. It just tied in.
Yeah. Right, yeah. You're there.
Signing day press conferences are propaganda fest. That was always going to be. I mean, he was never going to focus on misses yesterday or criticize a player that signed the dotted line. Come on, people.
You talk about the kids that you make. But if you want to send a message, at 8 o'clock this morning, you would have fired Maurice Harris. That's the message. The truth is.
No, I think if you wanted to send a message,
truth is
you would have had that press conference.
The day that you fired Wesley,
you would have had that press conference and fired Maurice.
Yeah,
you would have.
I mean, you were talking about a message.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to really be simple about it, when the way that they did it, this is. I'm very critical today of their message, and I don't care anymore. If it upsets them, it just upsets them. They don't listen to smart people who tell them how to message something from a public relations standpoint. When you make Wesley McGriff the sole scapegoat, it's disingenuous. Was Wesley McGriff a good defensive coordinator? Of course not. All Wesley McGriff did was take a job that was offered to him. Ole Miss is the one that kept extending his contract out and giving him more money than he was possibly worth. Congratulations for him for negotiating that deal. But when you make Wesley McGriff the sole scapegoat for that season, that is disingenuous at every level. Wesley McGriff is the only reason that team lost winnable games last season. Wesley McGriff is the only reason that team's kind of where it was last year. Wesley McGriff is the only reason that the defensive talent on that roster is absolutely lacking. Wesley McGriff is the only reason, because that's the message you send when he's the only person who pays for it. That is the message that you send to your alums, to your fans, to your supporters, is that it was all his fault. And that's disingenuous, guys. But and I know what they're saying. Well, that's not what we said, but it is what you said. When that's the message you send, and this is where I get into the Oxford bubble, and Oxford has a bubble because Oxford's a really cool town. It's charming. I mean, drive around Oxford at Christmas time. It's awesome. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, we live there every day and drive it every day, and I'm still wowed by how pretty the square is and stuff. And there's all these nice restaurants, and it's nice, and everybody's happy, and it's a lot of beautiful people and all that stuff. And you just sit in that bubble and you say, hey, everybody tells each other it's all good. It's all good. Everything's good. It's going to all work out. And in reality, you can't live on Oxford and Oxford alone. And outside of Oxford, the further you get among supporters, the angrier they are, the more frustrated they are, the more that they're starting to say, is it really worth it? Well, and they seem to be tone deaf to that.
What you're missing, Neal, too, or not you're missing, but just to add on to that more than anything else, is, I mean, all jokes aside, I'm out in town a lot. That bubble is going to burst soon. It has gotten very, very volatile, even around town. I mean, I was at a thing last night where everybody's really pissed. And it wasn't just the emotional piss of how yesterday went. It's just a continuation. That was another straw thrown onto the pile. And I think your analogy is really, really good. But the thing is, it's about to pop.
Yeah. Oh, I don't dispute that at all. But I think what you're seeing is a lot of the decision makers over there, the circle is way too small. They're not listening. They're not listening to enough people. And the truth is that there was kind of a promise is the wrong word here. There was kind of a feeling all year during the season that, hey, when this season's over, it's going to be some house cleaning. And to date, there's been no house cleaning.
I mean,
Bill Longo
think of it this way. I don't remember if you put it on the message board or if it was on a podcast or whatnot. But at one point during the actual football season, I believe, Neal, you said as high as 7. There could be 7 coaches let go. To this day, only 1 has been let go. Another, thankfully, took another job. But, I mean, you know, when you're trying to sell that change is coming and you're trying to sell that we understand that there's some issues and we're doing everything we can to fix it, I'm not really sure you are based on the proof. And then you can give me the whole, well, you know, we got to do it in our time. You got to do it in our time. Like, say what you want, but how fast would Tuberville have waited to make those staff changes?
I think you would have done it quickly. And I understand the rationale. I do. I understand the strategic rationale of, hey, there's this early signing period, which has become, as Nick Saban said yesterday, the signing period. Yeah, I mean, he's right.
You just look at signing day yesterday.
It's fast becoming the signing period. But, you know, and if you let coaches go and you don't have enough coaches to put on the road, especially for a program like Ole Miss, which had a lot of commitments, you risk losing some of those commitments. But there also comes a point where you have to say, we have to acknowledge what we are right now. And we have to send a message that this isn't tolerable. This isn't satisfactory. This won't be accepted. They're there. And I don't know that they know they're there. That's the amazing thing. I honestly don't know that they know it's as bad as it is.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair because if you look at it this way, this is how I would say I think that statement is supported. They do this. They do this move where they start envisioning all of these scenarios in which it'll work out. But all of these scenarios are so predicated on unlikely events that's how you realize, like, you know, I don't know if delusional is the right word, but there is a lack of understanding of reality, clearly, in the way that they make decisions.
Yeah, I don't think it's delusion. I think it's, but here's the deal.
It's what happens when you have groupthink. I think that's what it is. So that just kind of popped in my head. Like, it's the direct result of groupthink.
If today Ole Miss had signed, if yesterday on Wednesday Ole Miss had signed Brandon Turnage and the Kobe Dean and Radarius Jones and Charles Cross and the Handy kid, Jaron Handy, I think is his name.
Jaron Handy.
Let's say you'd signed those 5 kids, just for kicks and giggles. I'm not trying to rub anything in, by the way, if you're out there jumping off the roof.
I know what you're saying, but those are the top kids, and those are the kids. Those are in-state kids that were SEC-level talent. I get what you're saying.
You would be able to say today, from a messaging standpoint, hey, look, next year could get kind of rough because we're going to be young. Next year could be kind of rough because we're not going to be as deep as we want to be. And next year could be kind of rough because we're going to be kind of green in some big spots. But we just recruited these kids, and they're going to help us recruit double of those kids a year from now. And you would be able to sell excitement. Even in maybe a 4-8, 5-7 season, you'd be able to sell what Penny Hardaway is selling right now, which is, yeah, Tennessee got us, but we're coming. Now, you can't do that today. And so where you are today is you've got to hold people accountable, number one. And then when you bring in new people, you're going to have to fight this urge. People are going to say, I'm going to ask it, hey, you're giving all of these people these multi-year contracts. And I get it. That's how you're getting them. But if this doesn't work, are you just digging a deeper hole?
See, Neal, what you're talking about is exactly what, kind of continuing the conversation from last week, because we kept mentioning how Houston Nutt, even after 2010, had some excitement going into 2011. Now, it bombed out completely because of on the field, but it was because of that. It was because of the way he recruited. I went back and found this. In 2011, that class that we detailed, the top 5 kids in the state that year were C.J. Johnson, Nick Brazel, Dante Moncrief, Aaron Morris, and Tobias Singleton. Houston swept it, went 1 through 5. Yep. And from a recruiting standpoint, everybody went, oh, well, 10 was a blip. You had the 2 Cotton Bowls. You had 10 that wasn't good, blah, blah, blah. But, hey, now we're coming. And it was because of that. They signed those 5. They added a couple other guys like Cody Pruitt down at 10, and they dominated the state in recruiting, and they moved on.
Guests join our podcast on the Patterson and Earhart hotline. Patterson and Earhart, attorneys at law. They specialize in personal injury law and real estate law, but theirs is a general practice that can handle any of your legal needs. When you contact Patterson and Earhart, you speak to one of the partners in the firm, and that's who will handle your case, not some paralegal at a faceless corporate firm. If Patterson and Earhart can't help you, they'll refer you to someone who can. John Calvin Patterson and Wes Earhart are Ole Miss guys. They're local guys, and when you call them, you're going to get one of them on the phone within the same day, guaranteed. So whether you've been injured in a car wreck or have other legal issues, give them a call, 662-526-1992, or check out their website, pelaws.com. Your initial consultation is free. Podcast also brought to you by Home 2 Suites, South Lamar Court in Oxford. It's ready and open to accommodate your personal or business needs just in time for the holidays. Located at 101 South Lamar Court in Oxford at the intersection of Belk and South Lamar Boulevard. This Hilton property is locally owned and operated by Ole Miss alums just 1 mile from campus, 1.5 miles from the square. If your house is overbooked for the holidays, send your loved ones to stay with the wonderful staff at Home 2 Suites. They will feel right at home in this all-suites property. Each spacious suite has a living area with a sleeper sofa and a fully equipped kitchen. Guests have access to the complimentary breakfast, fully equipped fitness center, a free laundry facility, free Wi-Fi, free parking, and much more. Extended stay rates are available. Hilton Honors points can be earned and redeemed. Also, there's a 625 square foot meeting room available for rentals that comes with all you need for the perfect boardroom meeting, classroom style presentation, or catered meal. For more info, call 662-238-3400 or visit home2oxford.home2suitesbyhilton.com. The podcast also brought to you by Pinnacle Trust. Pinnacle Trust, based in Madison, Mississippi, represents clients in 24 states, has advisors in 3 states. Founded in 1997, Pinnacle Trust provides detailed, specialized investment management, financial planning, retirement planning for individuals and businesses, and much more. At Pinnacle Trust, investing is treated like a commodity, and decisions are made using objective research and information, not emotions. So regardless of your level of wealth, Pinnacle Trust will sit down with you, listen to your goals, study your expenses, and put forth a comprehensive, detailed financial and retirement plan. Cookie-cutter financial planners put you in a box. Pinnacle Trust builds a box just for you. To learn more about Pinnacle Trust, go to pintrust.com. That's PINN trust.com. Mention you heard about Pinnacle Trust on the podcast. You'll get 10% off your first year's fee. And it's brought to you by the Westin Jackson. Restore serenity to your soul. Visit Soul Spa, the ultimate luxury spa experience in downtown Jackson. Indulge in personalized massages, signature facials, soothing body treatments, and much more on their extensive spa list. And then gather at Estelle Wine Bar and Bistro, sip on a creative craft cocktail, or enjoy their curated wine list. It's open for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Chef Caden's mission is to connect guests with the community through local partnerships. So gather at Estelle tonight.
And that perfectly illustrates the point that I've made. It was becoming readily apparent during that 2010 season that Houston, he lost control of the program. And if you had your eyes open, it was readily apparent that he had lost control of the program. However, there was this Hail Mary idea of, hey, there's some really good in-state talent. We're going to let him recruit it. And to Houston's ever-loving credit, he at least got the job done. And
he did. He had that, and he had Jeremiah Masoli, which sort of, he was so good that it sort of covered up just how bad the program was. You know, it was bad, but Masoli stopped you from seeing just how bad.
Correct. Completely agree. But if you had your eyes open and you were on your toes, you knew. It's the same thing with Ole Miss in 2016. You know, forget the whole scandal thing. If you had your eyes open, you knew where all those cracks were in Ole Miss's football program. I'm talking about the actual, the football team. You saw the defensive holes. You knew that there was an offensive problem in terms of, you knew everything was becoming essentially just like a video game type offense. And if you were aware, you also knew that there were some huge recruiting busts, and it was becoming a trend. And you also knew that all the talent was lined up on one side of the field. But everyone chose to ignore it. And so now you've done the same thing with Matt Luke, where, it feels like they are consistently ignoring the obvious. And, I'm not saying I'm here to take a victory lap when y'all asked me if I would make a change in November, but this is why I would have made a change in November. When everything is all lined up on, well, this one recruiting class is going to save us. It's not. If you keep trying to think of these scenarios, these one things, well, if this happens or if this happens, then everything's okay. I don't think this is Matt Luke's fault in terms of where the program is today. I think Matt Luke just happens to be the guy that really wanted the job, and he was in a position to take the job, but that job had a ton of debt. And now that debt is coming due. The creditors want their money back, and he happens to be the one that's in charge. And he had some chances to make some payments along the way that could have helped. it would have hurt him at the time. Like, he might not have been able to take that vacation that he wanted to do, but he could have made some payments along the way that could have really reduced this. However, he chose to go all in on, well, if I hit this one big day, then I'm going to get this dump truck full of cash, and then I'm going to pay it all off, and we're all going to be happy and move on. And that's not happened. And they continue to dig themselves deeper and deeper in debt as they continue to try to double down and say, by God, this is going to work.
And it really leads to this question. Assuming that February is not some recruiting bonanza that is completely it's not going to be.
Well, I mean, who's left? I mean, I'm dead serious. Like, Nick Saban's right.
There's a handful of defensive linemen, but Saban's exactly right. He said, just as I predicted, he said this yesterday, because he was, in fairness to Saban, he was against this. He said, I know what this is going to turn into. It's going to turn into the signing day. It's going to interrupt with bowl prep. It's going to interrupt with being able to take any semblance of a break in December. It's going to be a bad thing. He's right. He's completely right. It is. He said it's going to take away from some of the high school seasons. He's right. But it has become the early signing period. It's when I laugh.
The signing period.
Yeah, it has become the signing period. I laugh when people say Saban is whatever. Anyway, what happens if this team, if I'm right, and I hope for Ole Miss's sake that I'm wrong, but what if I'm right and this is a 4-8, 5-7 football team, and you don't have many people in the stands, and you've committed all these contracts to all these people? I think it's December. We're 11 months from potentially a real crisis point where they've got to make one way or the other, where you have two really bad decisions and you have to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, remember when I said in November I was doing quick math, and I'm not saying like official people ever pushed back hard on that, but there was a lot of people that said I didn't know what I was talking about. That $15 million is now, I think, becoming an easy number of the amount of money that they could lose by doubling down. But what I think is even more fascinating is, Chase, I think yesterday, because you'd made the point, and I think intellectually I agreed with the point. You made the point that you try to add some context. Next year's record matters less than the way that they look. I think if they would have been able to have a good day yesterday, I think you're probably right. But I think what yesterday did is flip on that switch where unless they win, nothing's going to matter, because they've reached the point where they might even be a better coached football team next year. They might even show signs of actually, quote unquote, turning a corner. But that's not going to matter, because now emotion now is so angry and so vitriolic. Every loss, it doesn't matter if it was even a quote unquote quality loss. Every loss is just going to be a loss, and it's going to be an indictment on them.
I mean it along the terms of this, but I agree with you now after yesterday. But the point was being the way the schedule is set up. And they would have to win those early games to even get to that point. But the schedule in the back half is very difficult. It's very complicated. And even if they win those early ones, they can't have another one of these 5 out of 6 losing streaks in the year where they just get mauled. So even if it ended up like a 5-7 record or whatever, they'd have to be really competitive against those better teams on the back half, which matters maybe as much or almost as much as kind of what they did on that front half, just because of recency bias.
Right, and I just don't think it mattered. I think after yesterday, I don't think it matters. Like, personally, I think like for instance, they're not going to be a better football team because they're basically doubling down on a team. They've got a different defensive coordinator who's not going to be able to get any of his own players in. So they got a different defensive coordinator. Theoretically, they're going to have a different offensive coordinator. And they're doing it with worse players now. So you know what I mean? Like that's a very interesting strategy to try and combat apathy that's turning into anger. That's a very, very bold way to try and fix your problem. But now all that's out the window. Like it doesn't matter now, because whether or not all the problems are Matt's fault, and I think most of them are not, but there's a good number of them, and there's important problems that are his fault. It just doesn't matter anymore. It's now become Matt Lute's program, and it says, Neal's always pointed out, perception is reality at this point. And it doesn't matter if something is or it for instance, this isn't a court of law, and there's not going to be, like, we're not reading a list of charges and saying what Matt Luke is guilty of. At this point, it's his program. He's considered the head coach. He's had, whether or not in his mind he thinks it's fair, he's had plenty of opportunity to make some changes that could have helped him along the way. He has chosen, for whatever his reasons, and I think they're primarily moral reasons, and I think overall, like, in a vacuum, they're reasons that I would support, but these are reasons that if you were running a Fortune 100 company, if you gave those reasons to the board of directors for why you chose to act and why you chose to make the decisions that you did, they would say, well, we respect that. You're fired.
Yeah, I get it.
Because the bottom line is what matters.
And it is a business. It's a $120 million business.
It's Ole Miss. Let's also not lose sight of this. It's Ole Miss's biggest business.
Yeah, above all else.
It's their cash cow.
And it affects everything else. It has tentacles that runs through the entire university. There's no doubt.
I mean, let's also be real. One of the reasons why, I think I've got my timeline correct, right? On top of having an exciting player in terms of anytime you're watching a basketball team where the guy can come down and as soon as he's past half court, he's in range. Like, forget all of Marshall Henderson's antics and off the court. Like, in terms of watching a college basketball player, that guy was exciting. Like, one of the reasons why, and like, I get it, they went to the tournament and whatnot, but like, one of the reasons why, you know, kind of Marshall mania took over is because there was the idea that they were taking steps forward because the football program had momentum.
Yeah, fair. Well, any NFL thought before you get out of here? 1 minute.
Are people really this, like, the Rams hot takes are kind of annoying. Are people, like, completely dismissive of the fact that Todd Gurley's, like, clearly hobbled and they have an entire offense that's predicated on deep play action shots with a hobbled running back, so the defense doesn't have to really respect it like they did? Like, those takes are interesting. I do like how overnight Goff has gone from an MVP candidate to should they get rid of him. That's been interesting. I think it's very clear the Saints are going to be the number one. I think what's fascinating, though, Chase, are you panicked about the offense's lack of scoring, or are you willing to acknowledge there's been some injuries on the offensive line? They weren't a great offensive line to begin with, and when you lose starters on a probably below average offensive line, like, that tends to make it worse. Are you there / the weather's, you know, the calendar's turned December and whatnot? Are you there, or are you a little more spooked?
I'm okay, because I think they're going to get Ted Ginn back at some point, and as much as you want to make fun of him, he can take the top off the defense a little bit. And then
you got to run with him.
And I think they're actually a pretty good offensive line when Unger and Armstead are both healthy. So get me Armstead back at left tackle. Let me put Bushrod back in his place. Let me get everybody situated. And I think they're fine. I think so much of this is because of the injuries on the offensive line. that it's allowed defenses to get pressure in Breeze's face to kind of screw with him a little bit. The only thing that I'm worried about, and now they dealt with it early in the year, and I don't think this is schemable, so I think it's still going to be okay when everybody's healthy, is that whole deal, I told Neal this yesterday, about all the wide receivers being no-name guys and that being really cute. It's cute, but they're lacking separation. So if you told me there's a problem, it's that the wide receiver core, other than Michael Thomas, can't get any separation right now to give Breeze some lanes to throw the ball into.
I would agree with that, but I mean, I would even also add, I mean, based on pure talent, where does Michael Thomas rank among number one receivers in the NFL?
The very bottom of the first tier.
Right. I mean, and so like that's even more so, but I mean, you're right. Michael Thomas consistently does his job. Like I don't ever want there to be like
but Breeze didn't throw into Julio or Antonio Brown or one of these cats.
No. I mean, AJ Green, he's not throwing to
Odell.
You know, he's not throwing. Yeah. I mean, that I think my new favorite, the toy that I covet the most, is DeAndre Hopkins, because DeAndre Hopkins is at worst like probably the second best receiver or third best receiver in the NFL. I think he's the best receiver in the NFL when it just comes to the job of the position. And you know what the great thing about DeAndre Hopkins is? There is literally zero crap with DeAndre Hopkins. Like, we were watching the other night, like you watch him when he does interviews, like he does the move where he's got like a superstar smile, great smile, but you can tell, like, even if the TV's muted, you can tell he's giving answers, but he's saying absolutely nothing. He's probably being complimentary of the other team. Like, he's the ultimate guy that you want. If you're a fan watching, like, that's exactly what you want your number one receiver to be. And I think because obviously my number one receiver is Odell, and I have to go through the same thing every single Sunday of, is this guy worth it? I think it's making DeAndre Hopkins even more beautiful to me each and every day. But, I mean, Michael Thomas versus DeAndre Hopkins isn't a fair fight.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But I mean, they're fine. We'll see. I'm not losing my mind yet. They don't have to leave the dome again until the Super Bowl if they win one more game. So it's going to be all right probably. But yeah, you know, there's some chinks. They've got to find a way to get back healthy. Jeffrey, good luck on the radio today, and we'll talk again.
The podcast is also brought to you by John Edwards of Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. If you've been thinking about that golf trip with the guys, an anniversary trip she'll never forget, trips to Florida, the Caribbean, Ireland, Scotland, whatever it may be, get in touch with John. He's part of Virtuoso. It's a worldwide network of travel partners that allows him to supply his clients with added values and unique benefits that are simply not available to other travelers. John traveled the globe for 37 years before he got into the travel business. He knows the extra attention that's needed to make a special trip one that creates a lifetime of unique memories. So give him a call, give him your parameters, a budget, and let him have some options, and he'll give you all the options that you could want. He'll do all the research for you. 901-494-3387. Or send him an email, jedwards@regencytravel.net. First-time clients can save $50 off their first booked trip just by telling John you heard about Regency Travel on the podcast. Also brought to you by Grenada Nissan. If you're in the market for a Nissan vehicle, look no further than Grenada Nissan. They have a complete selection of new and previously owned Nissan vehicles. Go in, test drive one today. Tell Gene and Sandy that you heard about Grenada Nissan on the podcast at rebelgrove.com. You'll get Rebel savings on top of the already great deals at Grenada Nissan. It's GrenadaNissanUSA.com. We're also brought to you by Harry Alexander. Harry is an Oxford-based RE/MAX legacy realty agent. He's been in Oxford more than 4 decades. No one knows the residential and condo market in Oxford better than Harry. Go to his site. He'll prove it to you. HarryAlexander.com. Click on the Properties and Neighborhoods tab. Filter through by what you are looking for, and then he'll take care of the rest. It's HA@HarryAlexander.com. And the podcast is brought to you by Oxford University Bank. OUB is locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at OUB, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. OUB gives you the comfort of home, all the benefits the big mega banks provide, all the technology and products you want, all with the personal touch. When you call OUB, you speak directly with the live person. There's no 10 buttons. There's no 5-minute wait. What there is Kasasa. Kasasa is the absolute best checking account you'll find. OUB pays customers 2.5% interest on their balances up to $50,000 with Kasasa. And with Kasasa, ATM fees nationwide are refunded. OUB also has a commercial checking account now paying 1% interest as long as you keep $10,000 in the account. It comes with fully interactive online banking, remote check deposits, and so much more. Get in touch with someone at OUB, 662-234-6668, or check out liveoxfordbankoxford.com. OUB is FDIC insured.
Thanks to Neal and Jeffrey there for giving us a good bit of time. Both of those guys had to run at the same time, but we've got Russell Johnson next up on the Patterson and Earhart hotlines. We're going to go to him now. Russell giving us about 20 minutes to break down what happened yesterday, kind of his thoughts as everything moves forward. So, again, after we come off the phone lines, we'll go right back to them. Here is RebelGrove.com recruiting analyst Russell Johnson. Russell Johnson, kind enough to join us here on the Patterson and Earhart hotline on this Thursday morning as we are piecing together a podcast and talking early signing period, National Signing Day, the first of the two yesterday. And Russell, we're going to go over a lot of stuff here. But, to start this thing off, I mean, there's really not a way to sugarcoat it. A year ago, when we first started looking at this 2019 class in depth, we said that Ole Miss needed to, if nothing else, stay with their historical averages, which is, 5-6 kids out of the ones that people believe are SEC Power 5 type players. They need to get a few out of the top 10. They needed to have more scalps than just Jerry and Ely, obviously with his baseball future that is potentially on tap here. And as this thing closes, Ole Miss has a very, very poor finish. They lose out on Nakobe Dean. They lose out on Radar Jones. Brandon Turnage does not stay home. He ends up at Alabama. From a final day standpoint and how they closed, they were able to hold off Ohio State for Nick Broker, and then they were able to pick up Drummond. But other than that, it just seems like after all the things we've been talking about, 300, 400 days by now, Ole Miss did not live up to what was needed considering the opportunity that was in the state this year.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely say that. In the top 10, currently, obviously there's still the February signing period to take place, but currently Ole Miss has the number 2 player committed still in Jerry and Ely. The number 6 player, Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver from Brandon, who, if you ask him or if anybody around him asks him why he didn't sign, he will say that, he's all Ole Miss and he just wants to sign with his teammates. But I'm starting to think that there may be something else there. Mississippi State's going to push. Mingo and Mississippi State signee Jerry and Jones are very good friends. Georgia's getting ready to miss on a 5-star receiver, which makes me believe that they may re-show some interest in Mingo, who they offered earlier in the summer after a camp. Now, other than that, they signed number 9 and Dennis Jackson. And then that's it until you get to number 15, where Ashanti Seastrunk signed after a really good senior season. He rose in the rankings. He was, I think, in the 20s before that. But in a class where there is well over 24 SEC caliber players, it seems like Ole Miss did, come up short, obviously, with Dean, Derek Hall, Brandon Turnage, as you mentioned. But really, as Neal has said, as I have said, as I think you have even said, this recruiting class is critical for Matt Luke. And the remaining targets, whether or not Jaron Handy signed a financial aid agreement or a national letter of intent, is still up for debate as of 5:30 on National Signing Day. But he becomes a top target if he did just sign a financial aid agreement. If not, then that's another big loss for Ole Miss. Jaron Handy has a chance to be an instant impact on the defensive line, regardless of where he sits, wherever he ends up.
So we're going to focus on Ole Miss, but I'm kind of curious here. State didn't necessarily dominate anything in the top 5 or top 10 either. When I looked at it a minute ago, all of the top 5 kids in the state of Mississippi, all 5 going to different schools. Nobody was able even to double up and get 40% of the top 5. Why do you think that is? Why do you think after years of Freeze and Mullen having a good bit of success on keeping kids home, why do you think there was so much open season in the Magnolia State for other programs to come in and poach away from the Rebels and the Bulldogs?
Well, I think you kind of may have touched on the answer to the question in the middle of it. Freeze left, Dan Mullen left, almost all of Dan Mullen's staff left. Most of Freeze's staff is still in Oxford, but it appears that that hasn't had the lasting effect that either the administration or Luke or whoever was in charge of that decision ended up making. In the state of Mississippi, when the talent is higher, the stakes are higher, and the outcome is higher. You have to be able to close. And Mississippi State, while you said the top 5 all went to different schools, they were still able to sign the Rivals 100 offensive tackle Charles Cross, who Ole Miss wanted quite badly. They still have Nathan Pickering committed. There's rumors about Alabama. There's rumors about Florida. You mentioned Dan Mullen, and you can see why they didn't really close that well either in terms of December. But, like you said, it has basically become open season in the state of Mississippi. And until either one of the 2 in-state schools, Mississippi State or Ole Miss, kind of regain control, or at least, some kind of, I don't know, because, you look at the 2018 class in Mississippi was below average at best. It was not good. And if you look at the top 10, I think 3 or 4 of them were playing JUCO ball. And you take that and you look at the class of 2019, and you still see so many kids going to other places. And I'd be worried if I was a fan of either program going forward, especially with the class of 2020 being so top heavy in Mississippi.
Yeah, because that's what we talk about all the time. That's why 2019 was such an important class, or is such an important class for Ole Miss. It's not just about doing what you've always done. It's because it was going to be a setup class for either school to take advantage of, to be able to really build on it, because it is one of the better, deeper classes that we've come across, really, frankly, in the Rivals.com era. There have been a couple classes that have been good or probably better at the top, but from a 1 to 25, 1 to 30 standpoint, nobody's been as good as this 2019 class, at least perception-wise, coming out of high school. And that's where Ole Miss has just really, really struggled here to get the depth needed in Mississippi. They signed tons of Mississippi kids, but a lot of them maybe didn't have the offers to some other schools. And then when you compound that with what happened on Wednesday, we're taping it's on Wednesday, but what happened on Wednesday with Brandon Turnage and with the Horn Lake kids and just kind of the lack of closing again. It seems like other than a couple years over the last 5 or 6, Ole Miss really has struggled to close on signing day, close deep in the process. And let's bring it in there. Let's go a little more specific here. We mentioned Radar Jones. We mentioned Nakobe Dean. I don't want you to burn sources, but what kind of led to obviously you had put a future cast in with Nakobe Dean not going to Ole Miss. Felt a little better about it potentially on Tuesday night, but kind of take me through the last 24, 36 hours as you were reporting on the 2 Horn Lake kids.
Okay, so first I'll touch on Nakobe, and then you'll have to remind me to touch on Radar.
Yeah.
That's really, even just saying that really kind of seems to be what Ole Miss did as well. They seem to focus so much in on Nakobe Dean and Nakobe Dean and Nakobe Dean that they forgot about Radar. And I'm not saying that, he was an Ole Miss lock at any point. We talk about silent commitments all the time, but those mean nothing in this business. But with Nakobe, let's say we'll go from after the Mississippi-Alabama game when he threw up the infamous land shark that everybody is really upset about now all of a sudden. Before it was a phenomenon. It was trending on Twitter. It was everything. But now that he signed with Georgia, it's just terrible.
Yeah.
But at that point, you could say that he was leaning towards Ole Miss. I wouldn't say that he was committed to Ole Miss. He told John Summerall he was coming or anything like that. I would say the closest that Ole Miss ever got to that would be last night around 11:30, and then possibly this morning around 9. But after that point, I think that's where Nakobe may or may not have let people get in his ear. People who may or may not actually be actively in his life. You had some high school coaches, some family members. There are all kinds of different people. And with the high school coaches, there were several high school coaches in the state of Mississippi who advised Nakobe not to go to Ole Miss. Now, whether or not that is because of the perception of the program at Ole Miss or because they want to see him succeed at the next level and they don't feel that he could live up to the crazy expectations he would have had he come to Ole Miss. But that was, at least in my opinion, from a thought standpoint with Nakobe, that's where you kind of sit and think, maybe they're right, because if you think about it, he would have went to Ole Miss. He would have started spring practice. He would have been the guy, like the moment he walked on campus, like me and Neal talked about on the Soft Verbal, he would have been the guy. And that's a lot of pressure for a freshman who's going to be, studying engineering and all that. He goes to Georgia now, and he's a part of a program that, number one, is consistently winning. Number two, is consistently recruiting well, closing well, getting things done. And number two, competing in a weaker division than Ole Miss is. I'm not saying that factored anything into the decision, but you have to think about these kind of things where you weigh into a decision. Now, I know Nakobe's quotes also caused a little bit of a stir. He was talking about how much he loved Ole Miss, and at the end, he just had to make a business decision. But also, like I just mentioned, winning does matter to these kids. He could become the face of the Ole Miss program, or he could win potentially 1 or 2 national championships at Georgia. And that's a big difference, because at Ole Miss, no matter what happened, had he signed or had he not signed, they were not going to win more than 7 games at most next year.
I'm just kind of curious.
You agree?
Here. Yeah. I'm fine there. I'm just kind of listening to you and making sure I kind of get through all the questions that people would have for you. I followed this whole thing from afar a little bit, but it seems like John Summerall did a really nice job recruiting him. If Ole Miss, if you're in their heads, and again, you're having to speak for them, which probably isn't fair, but it's a podcast, so I'm going to make you do it a little bit. If you're Ole Miss and you wake up in the morning, from a coach standpoint, from a recruiter standpoint, what do you think? Maybe they think, hey, had I done something differently, or do you think Summerall is the lead? They did everything they could, and it just didn't work out.
I think there's really not much else you could have done from a Ole Miss standpoint, from like you said, a recruiting or the coach's standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, they did literally everything they possibly could. The only thing I would have done differently is sent either Tyler Siskey or Freddie Roach or hell, even John Summerall himself to Florida to see the dad when they were doing the big in-home visit with the mom and Nakobe.
Because Summerall went earlier in the month, but he didn't return on that last trip.
Correct. He was with Dean and Nikita all day.
Okay.
So that was that's the number one thing I would do differently. But at the same time, like I said, there really wasn't much else they could have done. They pulled everything out of the hat they possibly could, and luckily for them, those things that they offered and like the opportunities that they had mentioned and brought up, none of those have to be fulfilled now, which is good.
So what about Radar? Anything more on that before we move on?
Yeah. So Raydarius Jones recruitment, he took an official visit to Ole Miss. Obviously, Nakobe did not. And he was really, really, really feeling good about Ole Miss at that point. And then the following week proceeded. LSU went in home again. Ole Miss went in home. And then he went to Baton Rouge for his official visit. And you could see things just by talking to him, talking to people around him, talking to Horn Lake coaches. The vibe completely changed for him. It wasn't about being home and being with family. It was about getting developed as a cornerback and having the opportunity to potentially play at the next level. Now Ole Miss does have some defensive backs in the NFL, but if you try to compare Ole Miss defensive backs and LSU defensive backs, there's no comparison whatsoever. And there was some late push by Ole Miss because there's some pretty strong rumors about some LSU staff members potentially leaving in the next couple of weeks. And Radar got wind of that and apparently, obviously, got those rumors shot down or, pushed to the side. But with that, at one point I would go last night and into this morning. This morning was when Radar's, at least my thought, when I changed my future cast for him, which I probably shouldn't have done, but it seemed like inevitable at that point, that he was going to end up at Ole Miss regardless of what Nakobe did. The home factors. I mean, he was homesick in Montgomery at the Mississippi-Alabama game. And we talk about homesick being a factor in recruitments and how it only plays a factor if you land a kid. But if you don't land the kid, the homesickness wasn't ever really a factor. So I think that kind of answered that question. Maybe he missed his girlfriend or something like that, but it wasn't strictly he wants to be close to home. And you see that with his commitment to go to Baton Rouge and play for Ed Orgeron at LSU. And you talk about these programs outside of the state of Mississippi recruiting well, and you have to start in the SEC West. LSU, Alabama, those two programs, they don't have any fear of coming into the state of Mississippi. McKinley Jackson next year, Josiah Hayes next year. Those two are going to be the number two prospects top two prospects in the state in next year's class. And it's going to be really interesting, number one, because he's from Horn Lake too. And number two, because his upside may potentially be higher than Ray Darius and possibly Nakobe, Josiah at least. For McKinley, being down there on the coast in George County, that's likely going to lean towards Alabama. But he's already been committed to LSU. So those recruitments are going to be really interesting to see. And Ole Miss and Mississippi State are going to have to do things that they at least didn't do today in order to get those kids.
Yeah, Ole Miss has not done well on the coast over the years. Just quick answer here before I move on. Had Nakobe walked into Horn Lake's gym and told Radarius that he was going to Ole Miss, do you think Jones follows him, or does he stick with LSU?
He would have had to go to the bathroom and change his shirt.
Okay, you think so?
Because he had the shirt on underneath the zip up, and it was LSU. He would have said, "I got to go to the bathroom," and he would have changed his shirt, and it would have been done.
Okay, fair enough.
There were late rumors about UGA possibly taking Radar, but they never really seemed to materialize.
So, again, we've always been real careful with this. I don't want to change that, but let me ask it more in a general sense. From the kids that Ole Miss signed today, are there any academic risk? And if so, how big of a deal are they? Just either at positions of need or with the talent that the potential kid might have?
The secondary is a major position of need. And I know you said you wanted to be careful, but yeah. I've gotten to the point with the one kid where I'm not. It's so far out there that everybody knows that Jamar Richardson had to do well on his finals at Jones County.
Gotcha.
Jamar Richardson did well on those finals at Jones County and will be enrolling in January.
Okay.
Now with him, I mean, there's still other players at that position that are academic risks, and whether or not they double sign today, I haven't done the research yet today. I was just a little bit busy. I'll have to do that in the next couple of days to kind of see if they did end up signing with the JUCO, because more often than not, what these kids do, if they are grade risk, which I'm sure from your time covering recruiting, is that they double sign and they don't have the JUCO release the name. That's what Cam White did last year. Everybody knew James Williams wasn't going to qualify out of high school. Some people pumped it to where they thought he was going to, but there was never a chance anybody was going to fix the grade at Callaway after the things that happened there with the head coach and Malik Heath and all that. There was no chance.
So as we move toward February, give me a couple names. What should Ole Miss, and we're going to write this in more detail, but just for the podcast at the time, what are a couple different names, couple different guys that Ole Miss fans should be paying attention to as the normal signing day gets here?
Well, Luke mentioned JUCO linebackers today in the press conference, and that was really one of the main and only things I really got out of that 10-minute video I filmed today. But with that being said, the number one JUCO linebacker that came to my mind that didn't sign today is Lakia Henry. Lakia Henry is the linebacker who had committed to Tennessee early on in the process, right after a visit to Ole Miss, if you'll remember, and never really seemed set on going to Knoxville. Didn't sign today, doesn't plan on signing this week, isn't going to enroll early. So, as a JUCO guy being a non-mid-year, that's a worry for me at least, but it doesn't seem to be for Matt Luke and company. But other than that, in the linebacker position, the D-line is the number 2 priority, and then we'll get to running back quickly. Ladarius Cox at McGill-Tulane in Mobile is going to be the top defensive tackle target for the next month or 2 months, whatever, until between now and February 6th. Ladarius Cox will be the number 1 defensive tackle target. On the D-line between now and February, they have to sign some bodies. Luke mentioned that he was going to sign at least 2. I would push that number all the way up to 3 if they're able to land their top targets. But the problem between now and February is the problem that every school across the country is about to face. Your top target, your commit that didn't sign, becomes highly coveted because these kids, I think close to 70% signed today. And with that number being so high, the remaining 30%, the 3-star kid who didn't have a Power 5 offer could potentially now get those blue blood offers that he never even could have dreamed of, like we saw with Jalen Moody last year from South Carolina. But the 3 names to know on the defensive line are Ladarius Cox from McGill-Tulane, the current Tennessee commit, the pass rusher and defensive end Brandon Mack from Montgomery, who's currently committed to Pitt. He didn't sign today either. And then you've got the in-state West Jones, Mississippi defensive end Byron Young, who as of right now is a bit of a pipe dream. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised that Alabama wasn't able to pressure him into signing today. And then I guess you could go down the list a little bit and you could talk about Nathan Pickering from Seminary, but that is the definition of a pipe dream right now. Ole Miss can't even get that kid on campus. And then I also mentioned running back as a position of need between now and then. There only seems to currently be one target, and that would be Amonte Spivey. Auburn signed their running back today. Alabama signed their running back today. LSU signed their running back today. I don't know if Georgia signed a running back today. So it could end up being another Ole Miss versus Georgia recruiting battle. And to be honest with you, if it becomes the case, regardless of the relationships or anything taking place, I expect that Georgia could come in easily and take Spivey from both Ole Miss and Arkansas, the school he's currently committed to.
All right, let's finish up on a couple questions that are actually positive notes for Ole Miss. They signed a lot of offensive linemen today. They held them all together. Just as a whole, what do you think about the group? How do you like it? And then kind of who's the leader of that group that you think maybe has the best college career?
The leader of the group, at least from a tape standpoint, from a senior season standpoint, and from an upside standpoint, has to be Darius Thomas. Thomas projects to be a tackle at the next level, which is something that Ole Miss is obviously going to need with the departure of Greg Little, and then looking forward after next year when more names leave that meeting room. He projects well. He's got good size, pretty good feet for his size. And he had a good senior season. He's in Arkansas, first of all. So he doesn't get the attention that the kids in Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, he doesn't get that attention those people do. But what Arkansas was after him heavily at one point, Georgia was after him heavily at one point, and Ole Miss was able to win that recruiting battle pretty early on. He took his official visits in the spring and then shortly thereafter committed. Other than that, that's where there are quite a few projects, I would call them, kids who may project to guard, may project to tackle. But of those, I was really impressed with what Caleb Warren was able to do in the one-on-ones at the Mississippi-Alabama week in Montgomery. He looked really good. He's definitely going to be a guard. And then I could see Jeremy James getting out there at tackle in a couple of years and making an impact. Missouri pushed for him late, had him on campus last weekend, and then Nebraska obviously wanted him pretty bad too.
So who's the best kid that signed today? Dennis Jackson?
Ooh, the best?
Yeah, just overall. If you had to take one kid, if you're picking first and you're picking from Ole Miss's signing class today, who are you taking?
Yeah, I would say either Dennis or Sam Williams.
Just depending on your high school or JUCO preference, depending on position and whatnot.
Yeah, because technically the thing with Sam is that Sam could leave after next year if he's good enough.
Right.
Or if he's bad enough and just wants to go somewhere else.
Do you think he's ready-made? Does he step in immediately?
Ole Miss better hope so. Mike McIntyre better hope so.
Yeah.
It's a must.
No, I agree. I was just kind of curious. I didn't know if there was any kind of transition with him, or everybody kind of looked at him and thought, "Oh no, he's ready to go today."
I believe he will be on campus January 3rd for the intersession. And it might take him a little bit of time to get used to the college academic standpoint, but from an athlete standpoint, the kid's a freak.
Okay. Well, we'll end there, Russell. Appreciate all of it. Get some. I know you got a busy day tomorrow, but get some rest, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks to Russell. Thanks to Jeffrey. Thanks to Neal. Thanks to all you guys. We're gonna not have a podcast tomorrow, as we are starting our Christmas break. We'll obviously have plenty of content at rebelgrove.com, so stay on the site. But from a podcast standpoint, a couple days off right here, as we always do. We'll keep you aware of when we will return. We're not going to take a full week off next week or anything, but I don't know the complete schedule. Obviously, nothing on Monday or Tuesday, and then we'll come back as the week moves on. But anyway, again, rebelgrove.com. So many podcasts up, including a beer garden with Chris Dortch. Don't forget that. That is up in all the places that you listen to podcasts. Chris with an incredible story of a close call many years ago, and then they also talk plenty of basketball, Ole Miss, Kermit Davis, and more. So thanks to all you. Merry Christmas. Talk to you again.